Through the Gates of Death. Dion Fortune. Chapter 9. The Hidden Side of Death. The processes, even of physical death, are not nearly so simple as popular imagination believes, and it was a knowledge of the subtler aspects of death that gave rise to many of the funeral practices of the ancients which we look upon today as pure superstition. With the passing of the breath, the soul itself is gone, and is no more concerned with its cast-off body than a chick with the eggshell. But those who remain are concerned with it, and certain of the subtler problems of shock, of bereavement, are due to the little understood process that are going on in the discarded clay. We have two tasks to perform before our service to our loved one is finished. We must see to it that dust returns to dust as swiftly and harmoniously as possible, giving rise to none of those happenings which may be termed the pathologies of death. And we ought to follow up on the departing soul with the right kind of telepathic communication until it is safely established on the other side and will want to enter into its rest for a period. These two aspects of the last services to the departed are of very great importance, and we ought to give them our serious attention. Moreover, there is nothing that will help us in our grief so much as to feel that there is still something to be done for those who have gone over, and that we are not free to let ourselves go unreservedly in a paroxysm of emotion as we might do if we felt that we had nothing but ourselves to consider. Let us study first what happens to the discarded and empty body immediately after the departure of the soul, for this will guide us in our attitude towards it and our manner of dealing with it. Firstly, the departure of the soul only means that death of the central nervous system. There is a great deal of organic life still left in the body itself. It does not die all in one place. Indeed, for some days before death, or even longer, the soul may have been out of the body, floating at the end of the silver cord and a few feet above the bed, looking like a sleeping ghost and clearly visible to any psychic. While this condition prevails, there is deep unconsciousness on all planes and no suffering. It is only when the silver cord is severed that the soul finally departs and actual death occurs. The sudden rally and return of consciousness at the end is caused by the soul, which recovers consciousness on its own plane as the end approaches, making a last effort to concentrate on the body in order that the process known to occultists as the etching of the seed atom may take place effectually. This seed atom is a nucleus of force of the same type as that of the physical plane, which is retained by the soul throughout its evolution, and which plays an important part in the processes of rebirth. The term etching is of course metaphorical, and represents the tuning of this nucleus to a certain type of vibration and its impression with certain images. If this has already been done, the soul is ripe for death, and the last rally may not take place. Therefore, the absence of this rally does not mean that the process of death are going on as they should. On the other hand, when violent death takes place, if the body is so shattered that death is instantaneous, no etching of the seed atom is possible. Therefore, it is held by esotericists that the soul immediately seeks rebirth before the second death takes place, and equally rapidly passes out again, having merely assumed the physical body long enough to enable it to make its exit from life in due form. It has often been remarked by mothers and midwives that the newborn child, which has an extraordinary appearance of intelligence and maturity in its eyes, is not going to live. It is the eyes of an adult soul that they see looking at them. And all the service that the soul requires at their hands is the rites of burial according to its faith. It is not meant to live, it is only meant to die adequately. It may seem that this inflicts a hardship on the mother who has made her great sacrifice to bring it into the world only to lose it. But if we examine the karmic record of the case, and no occultist would ever attempt to judge a matter in the light of a single incarnation, we shall find either that there is a karmic debt owing, which is settled in this way, or if no such debt can be traced, then karmic credit has been given. This karmic credit is a point that is often forgotten. Sometimes the lords of karma owe us a debt which entitles us to one of those sudden strokes of pure luck which we can explain by means of no hypothesis, which only takes account of one life. The Good Samaritan, the complete stranger whom renders us a totally unexpected service, may be a soul for whom we have opened the gates of birth and death in a previous life. Once the soul has safely withdrawn, however, there is an immediate change. Any sensitive person can feel the difference between the atmosphere of the chamber of death, however peaceful, and the atmosphere of the chamber of the dead. During life, a man is under the lordship of the archangel of his race and the savior of his religion. But after death this dominion is withdrawn, or rather, it follows the soul and leaves the body to its own devices as being no longer of any concern. The vacant clay then passes under the domination of the regents of the air elements and the elemental forces of earth. Air, fire, and water each withdraw that which belongs to them and restore it to its own kingdom. In this process they are assisted by a certain type of life which belongs to the most primitive form of existence and which is fast passing out of manifestation. I refer to the unicellular organisms that live on dead matter. The saprophytic bacteria which cause decomposition. The parasitic bacteria which feed upon living tissues and cause disease are another matter. They belong to certain forms of life whose day is overpast and who, defying the law of evolution, refuse to withdraw from the physical plane. They are rebels against cosmic law, and advancing knowledge is gradually driving them out of manifestation. The curious feel of the death chamber and the fear that most people have of a dead body are caused by this opening of the gates of the elemental kingdoms. The beings of the elements are present and active when the organic matter has to be disintegrated and returned to its respective spheres. Sensitive people feel their presence, and because elementals belong to a very primitive form of life, find them disturbing. It is for this reason that it is not good for the living to remain in the immediate neighborhood of the dead. There are, however, 4 mighty archangels who are called the archangels of elements because they rule the elemental kingdoms as overlords in the name of God. These are Raphael, Michael, Gabriel, and Uriel, and they equate with the 4 evangelists of the Christian tradition, hence the child's prayer. 4 angels round my bed, 2 at the foot and 2 at the head. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John guard the bed that I lie on. Every rite for the dead ought to commit the clay into the care of those 4 great spirits before the throne. When they are invoked, it will be found that the somewhat sinister atmosphere sometimes felt in the death chamber will immediately lift and clear. The return to dust of the body, however, is but half the process of physical death. For there is another body, equally physical, equally mortal, which is called the etheric double. It might aptly be called the body of electricity, for it is an organized system of electromagnetic stresses, and in its meshes every cell and fiber of the physical body lies. Like a bottle in a bottle rack, it transmits to every molecule of the body the vital force which keeps disintegration at bay and maintains the unstable compounds of organic matter in their elaborate and fugitive forms. It is the withdrawal of the etheric double which marks the critical moment of death, when the breath is seen to pass. Embodied in it, the soul remains in an unconscious condition for a brief period, from a few hours to 3 days. If its tendency of the etheric body is prolonged beyond this time, or if the soul wakes up to consciousness while still in the etheric double, one of the pathologies of death has occurred. It is this waking of the soul while still in its etheric double which, in popular phrase, causes its ghost to walk. Within the appointed time, however, unless something abnormal occurs, the magnetic force of this body of electricity will have been exhausted. It will be like a battery which has run down, and the soul will slip out of its meshes and no longer have any link with matter. It is not this, however, that we call the second death. It is rather the second half of the physical death. And while it is going on, the soul is asleep in its deepest unconsciousness. It will now be seen why it is so unwise to try and get into touch with the soul immediately after it has passed over. For we may wake it from its etheric sleep and cause it to walk. Do not let it be thought by this that the esotericist condemns communication with the departed, but there is a right and wrong way of effecting this communication, and there are times when it may be safely and helpfully done, and times when it had better be left alone. And we need to know these things if we are to deal with death rightly. Our modern thought places adults in the same position in relation to the mysteries of death that children endure in relation to the mysteries of birth. There is a conspiracy of silence which confuses the issue and places us at a grave disadvantage in dealing with our problems.